Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our keynote panel, A Conversation in Art and Design. We're so pleased that you could be here. It's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Lee Davis. Lee is a professor of interior design at Ferris State University's Kendall College of Art and Design in Grand Rapids. With more than 35 years of experience in both residential and commercial interior design, Lee has worked across healthcare, office, and hospitality design before transitioning into higher education. Lee's current design focus is the collaboration and coaching of student work, which you'll see up here on the screen. With competition work that has been submitted over the previous academic year. She is also the past president of the Michigan chapter of the IIDA and continues to serve as a connector between the professional design community and emerging design graduates. Lee earned her BFA in interior design from Kendall College of Art and Design and her master's in arts at in environmental design at Michigan State University. Please join me in welcoming Lee Davis.
Thank you. Okay, hopefully I have my mic on. Good. So I am surrounded by four extremely talented people today. Barbara Gaber, here on my left, is an award-winning abstract painter who studied fine arts at the University of Michigan. Her work has received honors including the Andrea Toma Award for Excellence in Acrylic Painting and the Eva Briggs Award for Abstract Composition. Influenced by the abstract expressionist movement, Barbara creates expressive, intuitive works that explore color, movement, and emotion through abstraction, and she has also exhibited in the prestigious Michigan Fine Arts Competition alongside artists from across the Midwest. Welcome. To my right, I have Lori Tennant. She is a graduate of the College for Creative Studies and is widely recognized for her dramatic, large-scale botanical photography. Inspired by science and biology, Lori collaborates with botanists, conservationists, and master gardeners to document rare and endangered plant species through carefully composed studio photography. Printed on aluminum, her works can live both indoors and outdoors as sculptural installations. And through immersive multi-sensory exhibitions, Lori continues to expand the boundaries of contemporary botanical art. Matthew MacDougall, who is the only gentleman on our panel, so I'm hoping that you can all figure out who that is. Matthew MacDougall is an artist working in encaustic and mixed media, often described as painting with hot wax. Encaustic is a dynamic medium that shifts from molten to solid within seconds, creating both unique challenges and creative possibilities. Through layering, fusing, and sculpting pigmented wax, sometimes combined with natural elements, Matthew creates abstract works that explore texture, transparency, depth, and ambiguity, while often taking on a sculptural quality. And Katie Bromlich is a ceramic artist inspired by the natural forms and textures of the Great Lakes region. Her work blends geology with interior craft, creating what she describes as swept ashore cave decor. Since earning her BFA in ceramics from the College for Creative Studies in 2011, Katie has balanced her studio practice with community workshops and teaching throughout Metro Detroit. Today, she creates her work from her Hazel Park studio with pieces featured in select galleries and shops. So with all of that and the introductions, let's get started. And we always want to understand and know more about every artist's creative process. So I'm just going to start with Katie and work our way across. If you want to talk about a little bit about your work and your areas of expertise.
Thank you, Lee. I started my educational career in geology out in the Rocky Mountains, and I fell in love with physical forces and moved home, found myself in interior design at IADT, which was over on Rochester Road. And I raised my hand in that program and I said, "Where's the room in this building where we get to make stuff?" And my drafting instructor said, "Stay after class." And she helped me find a side door, and I ended up at CCS. Once there, I started in furniture, did a year in glass, and finally found clay. And clay and I clicked. I like the availability to working from my home. the hands-on, it was geology, interior design, and making stuff all wrapped up in one for me. So I like to imagine I'm a cave girl decorating my cave and that I found it all washed ashore. So I love textures. I love playing with shadows. I love as a long beachcomber, childhood to now, just sort of remembering those moments when you're alongside a lake and putting something on your wall that takes you there from inside your home. So those are some of my thoughts and inspirations.
Great. Lori?
Okay, so like your geology, I was really interested in science and wanted to be a marine biologist and had studied like crazy and wanted to get out of school as early as I could and ended up in a little series of accidents, one with a man o' war in Fort Lauderdale, and ended up having to like kind of stay away from the water. But I fell in love with photography my senior year in school because of the chemistry, really playing a lot around with the chemicals and just loved that. And I also ended up at CCS where I majored in fine art photography. So lots of experimenting there and really loved architecture, kind of abstract, and also learned a lot about portraiture, but always had this love for flowers and for gardens. My mother was a painter, and I was always in her garden. And so that was kind of my fine art habit while I was doing a lot of commercial photography. For clients, I did fashion for Crate and Barrel and J. Crew and all kinds of stuff. But I always kept my fine art practice going. Worked for a gallery, the Rubner Gallery, for years, and then had my own gallery. And so now I've developed this kind of cyclical practice where I'm back working with botanists and working in the garden. And my show travels to different gardens around the country, and I work right with the botanist. My dream in Naples, I found a marine botanist who I didn't even know existed, and we got to do a lot of water lilies, which was incredible. The work too with photography, you're used to having whatever 8 by 10 framed with a mat around it, with glass under, and it just wasn't really doing it for me. So I saw a Chihuly show in Arizona probably 12 years ago and saw that glass out in the garden. I said, I've got to get these pieces back where they belong, gigantic and in the garden. So that's kind of where my practice is now, traveling all over, speaking to garden clubs and working with gardens around the world. And it's really fun. And I just moved my studio home, so I have a kind of experimental scientific garden at my house.
Thank you. And I appreciate the garden, and I'm glad you're not a bug photographer because bugs that large are a little much for me. So Barbara?
Okay. Well, I'm an interior designer as well as a
easier.
painter, and here I am. So about 12 years ago, I decided to get back into painting, and I knew I wanted to paint large, and I will use unprimed loose canvas and mix the acrylic paint with a lot of water, splatter, um, and composition will emerge. And when the painting starts to sing, I know it's done. I also paint on stretched canvas, which will be on a frame. But I feel more freedom when I work with the loose canvas and a watercolor effect. And um, and then I was at the Michigan Fine Arts Competition a couple years ago, which was quite an honor. They select only 80 artists from Wisconsin, Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan. And so as far as inspiration, sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I get a lot of images and patterns and colors, and I try to remember them. but it's hard because they go away so quickly. So I will, when I can grab onto some of that, it goes into a painting. And I just admire the abstract expressionist movement. Some of those artists are Frankenthaler, Rothko, um, Morris Lewis, de Kooning. I just, the break free freedom that they all expressed, that just captured me when I would go to the DIA. And now those artists are no longer shown there. I have to talk to somebody. So yeah, that's it.
Great. And Matthew?
So I work in encaustic. I use encaustic medium on wood panel. And it was about 28 years ago that I was in architecture school at Lawrence Tech. And I was taking a sculpture class where the professor introduced us to a variety of different mediums. And this one was very intriguing to me. It's an ancient medium that is comprised of 8 parts of beeswax, natural beeswax, and 1 part tree resin from the damar tree from Indonesia. And that element increases the melting temperature and makes it more durable. And there's paintings that have survived over 2,000 years. So that medium, just learning about that was very fascinating to me. And so I immediately went back to my apartment, and I don't recommend anybody does this, but I took some crayons and melted them in some muffin tins and started painting with them, which is toxic. This is why I don't recommend it. When you melt down natural beeswax and ventilate properly, it's safe. So it's been a big experiment, and continues to fascinate me.
Thank you. So we want to talk a little bit about your process, but I think I'm more intrigued by everybody's career path that they may have in their head as maybe an architect when you are going to school, or you're in marine biology and suddenly you have to take a weird left turn that you never expected. So Matt, if you want to expound a little bit on why you couldn't do both architecture and art, because I'm sure every parent's idea of a secure path in life is art. But what is it that made you go, I have to pivot because I can't see myself doing what I thought I was going to do?
So I actually have a whole nother career that I do in architecture. So I do practice both. But my career in architecture is really in project management. It's not a super creative process. A lot of architects do have a lot of creativity in their practice, but just the path I've taken doesn't really have that. And so for me, being able to practice art alongside it has been just very refreshing and rewarding for me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you can do both.
So, yes.
How about you, Barbara? Did you have a hard pivot that you didn't expect to take?
I'm sorry.
Did you have a hard pivot in your career that you didn't expect to take?
No,
You have to use your microphone though, so everyone hears you answer.
no, not really. I just decided I wanted to start painting. It differs from interior design because I don't have to compromise at all. And when I do compromise in interior design, it usually kind of ruins the room. So I try to stay away from that. And yeah, that's about it.
Didn't want to be a marriage counselor anymore. So you had the Man of War incident. What was your
Well,
hard pivot?
that wasn't really
Okay.
that wasn't a too hard of a pivot. It was in my, dreams of this is what I want to do. But I did find that if you force something too much, which I was doing on a really fast pace, and I was just gonna like barrel through this and graduate early, that sometimes things step in the way. And I've had those pivots many times through my career. But with photography, going to art school, one of the things that you have as a photographer and not some other mediums is that you also have a skill. So that skill I could use photographing fashion or dogs or people or whatever, and so I could use that skill whenever I needed money. Right. And I always kind of did my art on the side, but I planned out this particular, I'll never retire, okay? But planned out this ease into the rest of my life to be able to travel and be able to work with botanists and learn more about botany and to just, really love what I do. And if it's working out really well. So, and I get to have a great time and grow a lot of plants and meet new people all over. So
That was a great answer. I too am on the long path to being a ceramicist until I die. But I started, so in geology back in the Rocky Mountains, I realized two things. One was that most geologists work for big oil. That was not super exciting. It doesn't include just walking around picking up rocks, sadly. And the other thing that I learned that sort of has been an undercurrent was that the softer and more tumble the stone is when you find it, the farther it's traveled from its mother rock, which is a true term. And I've just sort of thought about humans that way since. But I have done many, many jobs. I managed an art gallery after I graduated from CCS. I remember the weekend I was graduating from CCS, I was honors, I was the ceramic select, I had a sold out show, and my dad was an industrial salesman, and he asked me like, is anyone recruiting you? And I was like, Dad, I'm not, like, this isn't college in the 70s, I don't know what to tell you. I was like, I am offering myself an unpaid position as a ceramic artist. And so I took some of the money I made during my senior show and invested in a small kiln and just kept that operation going and the dream alive. But I managed a gallery all the way across town. I was driving 50 plus miles each way out from Hazel Park to Brighton. But I call that my MBA, and I learned how to wrangle artists, how much stuff costs, what you can ask, handling clients. And so I would go home very tired and sit at my kitchen table and still be making some ceramics. And it felt like the candlelight was dimming a little bit. In 2016, I put my foot down. I had tried to quit that job 4 times, and he kept calling me back and needing more help. And I was entrenched. We built this really cool, very successful business together. And I had to really take that leap in 2016. But from there, I like poured driveways on the side, and I've done so many things, and I love that show Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs. I am like a hands-on person. I want to try it all. I want to see all processes. Um, and so I've been self-employed. Back when I used to drink a little alcohol, I would pour a glass of champagne every month. I paid my bills. And I say, you get to do it again, girl. Keep going.
did the
brand
increase as you?
Yeah, I called it Make Do Studio. I had we're just out here. We're going to figure it out. Nobody, you graduate from CCS, in my case, with a big debt. Like you got a hole. So it's like, don't think about that too hard. You just got to keep going. And yeah, I will do anything. I recently have learned how to be a personal trainer. So in the mornings, I get up very early and I meet clients, and I'm sort of interested as I enter perimenopause and perimenopausal women's health and staying strong because ceramics is heavy. And my retirement plan is to do it till I die. So I got to keep the muscle mass. And it's nice to exchange a service in addition to selling one ceramic hanging object to the person, you know. So it's um, it's been eye-opening and a little freeing fiscally to have another form of income.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to do more, apparently. And it's like,
Only if you want to relax.
I do like the idea that I'm a softer, more tumbled version of myself. So you've had a lot of work with gallery, so I'm just going to start at this end and go back that way. A lot of work in the gallery, working with clients. Can you talk about shifts that you're seeing in the art world and kind of where you've seen that go?
I would like to think, I mean, I feel like people are interested in supporting handmade objects and having one of a kind pieces, especially in this mass production age that we're in. And like, you know, things that are revered for the speed and efficiency with which they were made and the cheapness with which we can attain them. Um, and our houses can be full of that, right? Like you can still go to Target and IKEA and buy a couple things here and there, but it's like the object that looks like it took a lot of skill and a lot of time just sort of sings. And I think the general population is kind of coming back to that, or it never left, but there's a new reverence for it with the way that like AI can reproduce images like crazy and emails write themselves, you know, like how nice is a card in the mail with the stamp and the spit, like you know, we want that kind of stuff feels more powerful. And I would also say, as an instructor and I lead workshops, people also want to try their hands at stuff more. The experience of, I would say, you know, closing your laptop and maybe like venturing back out to art fairs. I feel like there was a little lag where it was great to shop online and all artists were required to have a website so people could just stay cozy in their couches. But like something about the hunt is becoming more. You know, appealing and having that experience of like meeting your friend, grabbing a coffee, walking around, making a relationship with an artist or visiting a studio. That's a great way to like get in the back door is like, hey, I would like to order something, can I come pick it up? And then before you know it, I have clients in my home studio all the time, and they just the connection is deeper. So I would say connecting to these items, these art objects, is building.
So, Lori, what have you seen as changes in what people might want or how they relate to your art?
Well, when I was in the gallery business, again, right out of CCS, and you had to take art, you have galleries, and you took art to people's homes and they tried it or they borrowed it for parties, which we found out. But I think that really what's changing now is galleries are really going away and it's harder to see work that way. More and more people are seeing things online, Instagram, whatever, and they're finding things, which is great for artists because it kind of expands that. But also, for me personally, I have clients all over the world because they just send you a picture of their room and I can drop in through Photoshop different ideas for them, and they can see it right there on their computer and then mail them a piece. So that's really expanded for me to be able to ship my work out that way. And maybe they've seen it someplace, but it may not be the piece that they want, or they've seen it online. So that's pretty convenient.
Nice. How about you, Barbara? Have you seen a lot of change?
So abstracts, I'm partial, of course, but it can be used in any setting, a mix of, a really massive abstract piece could accompany more traditional pieces, photorealism, anything. It's about having the right scale, the right colors, very important not to stagger your artwork. It should always, let's say you have a sofa, could be one large piece or two or three of a grouping, and just a little bit over the sofa. A lot of people hang it way up here, and it has to relate to what is below. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. How about you, Matt?
So I like to work with interior designers directly, and for me, I noticed that they have obviously this direct connection with the client, and they spend a lot of time understanding what that client likes. Obviously, they're selecting all the finishes for the spaces, and so they're in a unique position to look for and place work that is directly aligning with the kind of look that they want in that space. Also doing commissioned work. So if existing work is not available, I'm often approached with a sort of range of finishes that I can use to create custom work from.
Great. So we also talked a little bit before this panel about trends. And one of the trends that we talked about in building and architecture and homes is more windows, more daylight, which is lovely, but it can also be a little bit harmful for art. But it is also highly impactful in creating shadows. And Matt, because you've got your encaustic with so much texture on it, and Katie with your texture, and why don't you talk a little bit about how trends in building affect either positively or negatively based on what it is you use and build with, or have your artwork, how that is impacted by all of these windows that we have now in architecture.
For me, one thing I've noticed is that often a room with so many windows will have a whole two, maybe, or three of the walls, completely with windows. So the remaining wall is very much a focal point. And so what I see happening is people want larger and larger work filling that space. So that's what I see.
And no worries about sunlight on your work.
No, the particularly with encaustic, it locks the pigment in a way that remains unchanged because of sunlight. So that is one of the things that I really found fascinating about the material.
Great. So that opens up all kinds of opportunities for people to put it in their homes. How about you, Barbara? Do you have to worry about where your art is placed in the home?
It's more, I place it where it belongs. But there's such gorgeous window treatments available. Luminettes are great. There's designer roller shades, which are really beautiful. There's sunscreen panels for vertical surfaces instead of vertical blinds. So the solar panels are just screens, basically. One big screen. It looks almost Japanese. But I did have a really sizable job, and I prevented a fading problem. I mean, as soon as we realized there was a little bit of fading, the blinds went up. But acrylic is pretty resistant to fading, but artwork that's on paper, so prints, watercolors, lithographs, they are a little more delicate and they would fade more easily. So even with the most tremendous view, you need to have the blinds, and you can control them with your phone. So you can set them for certain times of the day where the sun is really strong, and you could be away from home and not worry about fading on your furniture, your art, your rugs.
Great. And you actually have work that can go outside. So why don't you talk
Right.
about indoor, outdoor, and trends that you're seeing?
Right, my work is printed on aluminum for a couple reasons. The main reason being that I don't want glass over it because of the reflections and things like that, but also having it very large on aluminum frame to the edge like this. It is weatherproof, and it's all aluminum. And a lot of times people say, oh, I don't have any more walls in my house. I'm like, well, how big is your yard? Or do you have a porch? Which is awesome because, like, just imagine, like, in my property, I have these hydrangeas that I love, all summer. And then in the winter, they're lit with solar lights, and those hydrangeas just pop out of the snow in the back of my house. So I love the pieces being outside. For the botanical gardens. This was a commission for somebody's porch. And then it's the artist dream commission. She said, I don't want the people on the street seeing the back of the piece. I'm like, well, you need another one. And so we have that's a two-sided piece. So when people drive up to the complex, they have a piece to look at. So yeah, there's one in the snow.
So ceramics can hang out outside. I wouldn't leave the baskets out in the winter because water expands and, when it freezes and we can have cracking there. But the wall hangings that I call totems, I think of them as a declaration of thanks to your home. And I love them in entryways. And Pewabic down in Detroit hangs theirs outside. And so far, so good. I would not say that they are one, wind chimes. Two, I had a very brave customer ask if it was hurricane proof. And so no, they are not.
No, but here's my card. Just call me again when.
Exactly. But with the windows, also, so interior, I love the flood of light for the baskets. They make awesome shadows. And so having some natural light move across that collection is chef's kiss. And, there are walls. There's been rooms called like bathrooms and stuff and hallways and things that, like, private spaces and reflective kind of rooms. I love to tell people to hang the stuff up where they love to hang out. And it could be your favorite corner or over your yoga mat, or, where there's a will, there's a way. You will find a way to get the art that you love up, especially with the help of a, savvy interior designer. So I encourage, yes, windows are good. I like bringing the outside in as much as the next girl. So, I think there's room for all of it.
Well, I will say my favorite place to put really lovely art that that you love the most is in the kitchen, because there's nothing better than having something you love to look at or touch or feel when everybody else in the house comes in and asks the horrifying question, what's for dinner? I don't know, but I'm enjoying the art. So given that, how emotional is that purchase of the art that you work with, and how do you work with clients to kind of build a collection?
Great question. I am constantly, so part of my exploration and evolution has come from teaching, because I'm very comfortable with what I know how to make. And I'm obviously not a robot, but you'll understand the wall side reference. I am the factory. So I like to see things clustered, or scaling up and letting the thing carry. It's unfortunate when someone wants to celebrate the work and they put a tiny piece on a giant wall, and they're like, it's like, no, it's a postage stamp. Like we need to, I know gallery walls may be in or out. That's up to you to decide. But clustering it with something or anchoring it, like you can have a TV on a wall, but you can also have something handmade or, made with love and skill, like in that same field of vision. To Barbara's point, like things need to be anchored by the furniture and by, I love a door frame, creating hard rectangle lines for hanging near You got to take into account wall plates and switches and things like that. And in terms of like expanding with clients, I'm slow to adding color. For many years, I only glazed with white. Then I added light blue. Then I added dark blue. And now I'm glazing the whole rainbow. And it is very exciting to me. But it does allow my clients to also expand into color as well with me. And some just want to stay in the neutrals. And I'm happy to go back and continue to fill that need. So yeah, I like just having the conversation. And I will say I appreciate it when someone really reveres the piece, but take the tag off. Like, take the tag off of your fruit basket. Use it. Warren McKenzie is an arts and crafts potter, and he said that if clay didn't break, potters would be sunk. So, like, as soon as your little basket or your niece or your cat or a football is flying around and something breaks, for the wall hangings, I can replace the piece. For the baskets, like, you're on the hunt for a new basket, like your favorite mug took a tumble, it's time to go buy a new favorite mug. So it's ashes to ashes, dust to dust in the clay world.
So Lori, your pieces are so large. How do you work with clients on building collections or advising them as they kind of expand into the world of art?
Well, my subject matter is so emotional and human touching to begin with that everybody has a certain feeling or memory or, affinity to that. And like, Bruce White is here, right? You're gonna love this story. So I had a client buy something of mine, and it was kind of small, 12 by 12 in Harbor Springs, probably 20 years ago. And she has a house here. And she called me. She said, I hope you're still doing these. I think I've ruined my piece and I need another one. And she told me that she would cart this piece back and forth every time she went from the north to her home in the south. And, the frame had kind of gotten dinged or whatever. So I just created a new, piece of that same image for her because that's how much she loves it. And that's really special, I think. So with building collections, I have people that collect work and they're like, I need another piece, or what are you doing, and kind of follow me, but I'm always in search of that new person that we can bring a piece to.
Convert them over. Yes. How about you, Barbara? How do you work with clients and helping them build collections and expanding in their own art?
Well, as a designer, that's pretty easy for me. The clients recognize beauty when it's shown to them. They surprise themselves and expand their taste level, and it goes along with the interior. As far as my emotions, when I'm painting, I go into sort of a zone, and it's akin to meditation. So painting is just as good for you as meditation is. And my emotions hopefully translate into the art and therefore picked up by the client. And I notice when I'm painting, I barely eat. So it's good for weight loss.
And Matt, how about you? How do you work with clients and help them build collections?
I find as time goes on, I get more repeat collectors. So I think a lot of times when my work is collected, it's people develop a connection to it. It's very unique and highly textured, and I feel like it. There's just a lot to experience with it, and so I find that I'm being contacted for another piece in a different home or a different space in the same home. I also like to work with triptychs and diptychs, and some of that is resulting from some limitations of the size of wood panels that I paint on, which is necessary for encaustic. Can't paint on canvas because it flexes, so you want a durable surface.
Great. Just as a personal curiosity, does your studio smell lovely like beeswax and honey?
Yes, I think people who visit there tend to notice it more than I do, but it does. I actually live in Davisburg, and there used to be a candle factory. It's no longer operating, but I remember walking in there before, and it very much smells because of the beeswax.
Also, an emotional connection then to your work. It's like, I
Mhm.
remember how good the studio smelled.
Yes.
So, do you have a favorite installation that you recall? Maybe a client that put it in a place that surprised you or delighted you or thought, I never would have thought of my work there?
So last year I was able to complete a rather large triptych. It was three 40 by 60-inch panels. So it spanned over 11 feet wide. And I think it was in kind of one of the images up here. So I was able to do that for a collector for their home in Chicago. And they had previously collected a piece of my work. And it was, smaller, but that was quite a challenge and not, not to mention moving and installing it as well. So
And hard to appreciate in a photograph.
yeah.
You really have to be there to see
Yeah.
something that powerful. How about you, Lori? Favorite garden or?
Well, there's a lot of favorite gardens. This piece actually is one of the ones I want to talk about, and I don't know if the other one is next to it, but I had a corporation in Laguna. Their CFO had already started collecting my work, and the CEO saw it and said, "Oh my gosh, they had this campus that looked over the mountains, and they really developed this outdoor like workspace, right?" And they're like, "We want these images outside." So that was really lovely because it wasn't a commercial space, but they were making it, really emphasizing the natural part of it. And so there was the one piece that you saw, aloe, that we did in a triptych because as you walked by, they had like a walking path. And as you walked by, it kind of moved. But if the other piece comes up, they're like, at the entrance, we have an area that we want you to do this giant piece, okay? It was 12 48 by 96 panels.
Wow.
And we made it into a big cube because it was covering the electric box. So, they're putting these in front of everybody's house. I'm like, oh, well, I could have a whole new cottage industry. But that was amazing because it was a big square green box. This is it. See how big it is?
So did you have an access panel?
Yes.
Yeah.
The back, yes, we did have an access panel. The back was open.
Yeah.
Where they had shrubs, but it was 3-sided. And then they have since planted all kinds of aloes and beautiful plants in front of it, which is how I like my work, so that it kind of emerges out of nature. And, bugs love stuff. They land on it and think they're going to get the biggest meal of their life.
Psych!
So, yes, and, when you are uninstalling pieces, you have to be careful of who's moved in. Because in the back, there could be spiders or whatever. So.
All right. How about you? West?
I've had a few instances where the work has been selected for like Vogue Home in a beautiful kitchen, and when the only object on the countertop is one of my baskets, like that's really cool, and I get it. It's stage. That's not life, but it is an honor. Home Polish picked up some work staged in homes in Chicago, and most meaningful was a curtain of ceramic components tied that a couple exchanged their wedding vows in front of. And so just like being included in that kind of a intimate ritual, and deciding to bring in handmade and contact an artist. I've done centerpieces for weddings. I've had a dear friend contact me for corporate or client gifts, and just sort of being able to fill those needs and think outside of the box, and expand who is receiving ceramics, who is seeing it, and how it's treated.
Wonderful. So that gets us just about to the end. We have a couple of minutes left for Q&A. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask, the mic will be coming around to you.
We'll start here, and if everyone could speak into the microphone, including the panelists we're recording today.
This is for Matthew. How do you imbue color in your pieces?
Great question. Yeah, I realized I didn't talk much about that. So when I bring together the beeswax and the Damara resin, I use an electric skittle, essentially, that can bring it to a specific temperature of 200 degrees, and it becomes molten. And that's when I add usually dry pigment. So just pure dry pigment. And depending on how much pigment is added to the encaustic medium, will give it, either very translucent surface or very opaque.
I'm curious if you could comment on how you feel about commissioned work. Is it something that you enjoy, that experience, or do you find the boundaries to be somewhat limiting in your process?
I love it. I mean, because then you're really working with somebody who wants your work, and you're finding out, just the conversation that goes on with them. And so that that piece is really going to be personal to them.
Anybody else with a commission? Yeah.
For me, as a ceramic artist, it does add a level of stress, because this is the workmanship of risk. And so as soon as it needs to be a certain way, sometimes the kiln and the process sort of take you a different way. And so I accept commissions and work through them, but it is a different level of stress than just for building inventory for a shop or for a show. Make sure the color's right, and climbing into the client's eye and meeting their expectations. So like that amplifies while I'm over my table working, just to make sure that it's delivered and they're very pleased. So I it's a challenge. I accept it, but it does add a tinge of stress.
For me, they're much more challenging. It's very different when you're presented with, sort of a list of expectations that you have to adhere to, rather than just creating whatever you're feeling at the moment or interested in. But my experience has also been that it's the most rewarding work. So, because you are able to establish a very close connection with the collector.
Barbara, do you do commission work? Commission work?
Yeah, once in a while. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting it. People who want to work with certain colors, certain sizes, and I'd rather not work with commission work. I like doing my own thing, but it has been successful. So,
All right.
I'd like to know, how do you hang large pieces on the wall? How do you attach them to the walls so that they stay there?
okay, I didn't quite hear the question.
How do you actually attach the large pieces to the wall?
Oh, okay. There's a couple ways.
First is picking up your mic.
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, so IKEA has a window treatment system, and it's just a wire with like alligator clips, and you can suspend the artwork almost like a shower curtain that's not folded up, put a spotlight on it, and it's a very great contemporary look, kind of hard to visualize. I even made a mock-up of this thing, and people still couldn't understand what I was doing. The other way, this is the loose canvas paintings. The other way is to adhere it to a beautiful piece of fabric that's stretched onto the stretcher. And then you make a margin, so you have a border around the painting of the fabric, and the painting is adhered on top of that, and then a frame and glass.
And Matthew, you've got very large pieces that I'm assuming are quite heavy.
So I just was working on a 40 by 60 inch painting the other day and trying to track about how much wax or encaustic I've used, and it was close to 20 pounds, about 16, 17 pounds, and then the weight of the panel itself. So I like to use French cleats, French cleat. So it's basically, two very shallow pieces of metal that nest together, so it stands very close to the wall. I do hang by wire as well, especially if it's a single piece. But if it's more than one, I like to use the cleats.
Those French cleats are nice also for keeping it straight and even on the wall, which is lovely. How about you? Do you have big pieces that you have to worry about hanging?
Yes, I do, but my work's very light. I mean, they probably weigh 5 pounds, and so you have to worry about wind, and there's security locks. So the French cleat on top, and then there's a little part on the bottom that locks the piece to the wall. Whenever it's necessary, get a professional hanger. Somebody to come in and really help you with hanging the piece, because I think one of my worst pet peeves or nightmares is when work is hung too high. We have we don't want to lean back on the art, but then the art is, it's way up here. So it's really good to have some professional guidelines in hanging the pieces so they are, look good for everyone.
I'll just add no command strips. Nails and tiny pin nails and little screws and things. Just obviously look cleaner, more minimal. I also use French cleats and the AAOK hanging hooks that you nail in at a 45-degree angle. Those are pretty efficient for a canvas with a depth. Yeah, when in doubt, also ask the internet too. They'll help you hang it. But for multiples, French cleats are the best because you can just click them right on. You're not trying to line everything up painstakingly. So.
And I will say, don't be afraid of holes in your walls. I've had clients in my past that say, well, I don't really want to mar the wall. I'm like, you're covering it with art. It doesn't matter if there's a hole in the wall. For heaven's sakes, put a hole in the wall, and then you have a good reason to buy art to cover up the hole in the wall. So I think we're at the end, or do you have time for one more? Okay, so if there's another question.
Hello, this is for Lori. I know that you use aluminum on the back of your art, and aluminum will soak up heat. So do you ever have a situation where it's in the sun and it could damage the art on top of the aluminum, or that doesn't ever happen?
Well, there's different kinds of aluminum printing. If you go online and you want a piece on aluminum, very often they're putting a paper or a vinyl on top of aluminum. The process that I use, the images are actually directly printed onto the metal, and they would be hot to touch, but I really haven't had any trouble with heat. Right. Now, you can also, I have them in Florida where there's sea air and, they've been pretty tested. But anything that you're going to put in direct sunlight in heat for years, there's, an issue. But they're chemically making new processes all the time. So I just started printing on glass actually a couple years ago. There was one image that had 3 water lilies above a pool, and this is printed on glass. So the print is actually on the back of the glass, which protects it a lot. And it's just amazing. I'm very excited about that.
Thank you. I will also say, as someone who has a back painted glass backsplash in my kitchen, that would be awesome.
They have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amaggio. In
Yeah.
fact, they
They show here, I think, in the resource center, it's called Amaggio, and they do these amazing backsplashes or bathrooms or whatever. That's how I found them. There they are. Okay. So, and they're 40, 50, and 60 in diameter. They're stuck to the wall with these giant magnet cleats, which I did not install. They did. But it's interesting because you don't have any grout, right, for their backsplashes. It's really beautiful. You should check out their website, Amaggio.
Right.
We've just got one more question.
This question for Lori. Are these paintings that you do, are they from your imagination, or do you have like models of the different species of the plants and things?
These are all photographs.
They're all photographs.
They're all photographs. I love Dutch painting, that Rembrandt chiaroscuro, right? And so I find plants all over the place. People mail me things in FedEx boxes. Lori's got to photograph this. It's so I find things all over, and I work in my studio in the dark. Okay, so and the lighting is what really brings out the images. And I play great music, so I kind of call it dancing with plants, whether it's Bob Marley or classical music. And a lot of things don't work. Like I'll bring them in and they just aren't working. And I have a whole rack of dried plant things. So you'll see in some of my work that it's not the actual plant as I cut it or got it, but it would be the architecture of that pod or whatever. So
I just have a comment because I think this has been the most inspiring panel that each of you have such different crafts, and you've actually answered a lot of my questions through your talk about your work. And it's just great to hear your articulation of what you do. So thank you.
thank you.